Hey guys, one of the most requested topics that I get at any of my classes is how to build foundations. And we cover this in depth as far as principles and concepts go, but because of time, we usually don't get a chance to do hands-on, and I don't get to show people how to do it. So I've decided to start making some videos demonstrating how to build foundations a little bit more in depth, showing each step of the way. And in this particular project here, I'm going to show you how to build a concrete slab. This is just a very small version, but it'll act as a great demonstration to help get your mind going in the right direction. And if you can take these concepts, you can build a bigger slab. So we're going to start today here with this small slab, and I'll show you how to get started doing concrete slab foundations, and then in the future show you how to build bigger slabs for actual structures and load-bearing cob walls. So the first thing you want to do when making a concrete slab is to build your forms. And building the forms for a slab is actually really easy. You're going to pick out lumber to the right thickness, dimension that you want your slab to be. So in this case I have 2x6s, and a 2x6 is actually 5.5 inches in width. So keep that in mind. 2x4 is actually 3.5. So you probably don't need to go thicker than a 2x6 in most cases. With a 2x6 you can place rebar and you have enough space in there for that. So you're going to make your box. I just put a couple screws in each end, and then we're going to reinforce it later with these bars on the outside. And also you might want to have a compass. I use this compass to line up my forms, so I have it lined up north to south. You don't have to do that, of course. Some of the tools you might need. You're going to need these stakes. These are going to drive into the ground and hold your form in place. And they have these little holes in them, so you can put screws through there or nails. You're going to need some rebar. So this rebar is what's going to go inside the concrete to reinforce it. Now you're going to need some basic things like a little hammer to drive those stakes in the ground, tape measure, square, some string line, screws, a drill, and then you're going to need these little wire twists with the pig's tail. That's what you're going to tie all your rebar together with. And then this is optional. This is an edger. This is what you use along the side of the form of the concrete to get a nice edge on your concrete. And then over here we have, this is called a magnesium float. You'll see it's kind of thick. This is actually made of magnesium, and this is what you're going to use to bring the what they call it, mud. You're going to bring the mud to the surface of the concrete and push down the big rocks. So you get a nice smooth surface with this, and typically you'll go over the surface of your concrete probably at least twice with that. And then here we have a steel trowel, finishing trowel. You'll notice this is really thin compared to the magnesium float. This is what you'll use at the end if you want to get a really nice smooth finish and seal the concrete. In a lot of cases you don't even need to do this. And then you need a level. For a small form like this, just a 4-foot level is all we need to level off all the corners. If you have a big form, like for a big house slab, you'll need a laser level, which I'll show you how to do in another video. This is a screed board, usually what it's called. This is actually a magnesium screed. You can just use a piece of 2x4, just make sure it's a straight 2x4, and this is what you're going to use to screed the concrete off the form and make sure it's level. And then here you'll need one of these mixing hose for concrete. These have the holes in them. Helps mix the concrete a little faster, unless you have a concrete mixer. And then you're going to need some shovels. So these are the basic tools that we're going to use here today. And I've got a hose here as well. You need a good water source when you're doing concrete as well. So when you drive your stakes in, an important thing to do is make sure they go below the top of your form boards. You want to have them all below the top, because later when you get the concrete in there, you're going to use your screed board to screed off the top of the forms. So it needs to slide smoothly. You can't get caught on those bars, otherwise you won't have a proper screed. So before you screw in your stakes to the forms, make sure all your stakes are going to be below the top of the form. So the next thing we want to do is level off the entire box. So what I'm going to do is use this back corner as a reference point, and I'm going to measure, or I'm going to level off every corner based off of this back corner. So I'll lay the level here on the back and then check each corner. So this corner here is looking a little low. So all I'm going to do is just raise up the form boards in this corner until I get it level with that back corner. So almost there. Just a little more. And that's about perfect right there. So what I'm going to do is just put my screw through that metal bar into the form, so this form box can't move in this corner again. Alright, now I'll do the same thing to the other two corners. Okay, so you'll notice I put up these string lines here nice and tight. And this is actually only for a demonstration purpose, just to show you this concept, because for such a small form like this, you're not going to have these forms bowing out. If you have really long form boards, like let's just say this was like 20 feet long, there's a potential that this form could actually bow out from all the weight and the pressure of the concrete inside the form. So the purpose of these string lines is you can keep a visual on if your forms are starting to bend out, because this string should stay straight the entire time even if these boards bend out. But you'll notice a difference if you look down the line. You can see if your forms are bowing out. So this is a really good little trick I learned from Mike Day Concrete channel, and it's not really needed on this project here, but it's a really good little tip if you're doing a big slab. Now I'm placing the rebar inside the forms, and I'm putting the rebar on these little plastic rebar chairs. These rebar chairs come in different sizes and configurations, but the purpose of them is to raise the rebar up off the ground surface. You don't want to have rebar placed on the ground because then it has contact with moisture. Rebar can rust, and over time it can rust out, and then you lose a lot of the structural integrity of your concrete, because the rebar is a reinforcement in the concrete, kind of like how straw is a tensile strength inside of cob. So here I'm using these little twist ties. All this stuff you can buy at your local hardware store like Home Depot or Lowe's. And we teach how to do these things at our workshops, but it's nothing complicated. You just wrap the twist tie around the rebar and use that little tool to twist it up. And then I always bend down the little twist tie. So now, jumping ahead, I've put the majority of the concrete in here, and I'm using the screed board just to get it leveled off, basically. And I can figure out how much more I need to put in here. So now I put the rest of the concrete in, and again come back to the screed bar or the screed board. Again, this can just be a 2x4. It doesn't have to be a special screed board. So I'm just working it just to try and get it basically level and all the form filled in. So here at the end I'll have some excess concrete. I'm actually going to take some of that and fill in the little holes that are left over. So there I've got all that excess at the end. I'm going to try to save that too, in case there's any other little divots to fill in. So you'll see I'm just using the steel trowel to move some of this excess concrete around. You can use it kind of like a little shovel scoop. And I'm going to go back over the whole thing again one more time with the screed. Now I picked up the magnesium float because I really want to kind of work this concrete into these the sides here, make sure there's no gaps. So at this point I'm really going to be trying to work the concrete kind of with some pressure using this magnesium float. A couple little empty spots there on the sides. Now I've got all that excess, I'm going to put it to the side there. Just scraping off all that stuff off the top of the form board just so it doesn't get in the way of the magnesium float. So I'm kind of going to use the top of the forms as a guide with the float as far as what level is. So yeah, now I've got the mag float out. Really just working the whole surface now with the mag float. Now I'm trying to apply a little bit of pressure here because what I want to do is actually push the aggregate or the rocks down, and then that should bring up some of the mud. And I'm pressing my finger in it. It's been about half an hour maybe since the last time I worked it. And I pressed my finger into it, and it only went into the concrete about 1/4 of an inch. So at that point I kind of knew that it's time to get the mag float out again and work this surface again. Now I've got the edger out. So this is my first pass with the edger, and it's going to be a little rough on that first run with it. But do it while the concrete is still sort of wet, because otherwise it'll get really hard if you wait too long. And you can just keep going over it with the edger really as many times as you need until you get it looking right. So now I waited another half an hour or so, doing another pass with the mag float, and my finger is going in just barely at this point. So it's almost to the point where I can use the finish trowel. I'm just going to keep working it with the magnesium float and the edger, and then finish it off with the steel trowel. So now here's the last pass I'm doing with the edger, and that edge is coming out pretty nice at this point. So just use that edger, move it back and forth as you go. And now to finish up, I'm using the steel trowel. This is going to seal the concrete and give it a nice, smoother finish. Usually 2 passes with the steel trowel is enough. So that's the basics of doing a concrete slab foundation, and foundations are really important. It's a topic I really like to go into. So hopefully I'm going to do some more concrete slab foundation videos, because I have a lot more to do here within the next 6 to 12 months. So I'll try to film those and explain the whole process for you guys. If you guys have any questions, leave them down in the comments below, and I'll try to get back to those pretty soon here. Thanks for watching.